97% of the universe is already gone. Not destroyed, gone the way a ship over the horizon is gone. Of the 2 trillion galaxies our telescopes can photograph, all but 3 in every 100 are receding from us faster than light can chase, and nothing in physics can ever bring one of them back within reach. Space itself is growing 70 kilometers of new emptiness every second across every great gulf of the dark, and the growing is speeding up, so the door closes a little more each night. 20,000 stars slip beyond reach every second. 3 entire galaxies a year. And the sky never mentions it. The lost galaxies still shine in every photograph, indistinguishable from the few we could still touch. By the end of tonight, you will know exactly why the fastest thing in existence loses this race, why every civilization that will ever exist is sealed inside the same silence, and why this trap, seen whole, is also the reason you can rest. Get comfortable. If you like falling asleep to the true size of things, a quick like and subscribe helps this channel reach more curious minds like you. Because by the end of this, you will know exactly which 3% of the sky is still yours, and that it is more than anyone could ever spend. Now, let's gently drift into this. The ceiling above you is holding still. You can trust that. The walls of the room are exactly where they were when you closed your eyes, and the night outside the window is the same night it was a minute ago, and nothing about any of it feels like a place where something enormous is happening. Whatever the sky is doing tonight, it is doing it quietly. If you were to get up, walk outside, and stand under the stars for an hour, you would see them wheel slowly westward with the turning of the earth, and that is all you would see. Nothing rushing, nothing receding. A sky that looks for all the world like furniture fixed, patient, permanent, the one part of your life that never rearranges itself while you sleep. And for almost the whole history of looking up, that is exactly what everyone believed the sky to be. Permanent was the entire point. Civilization set their calendars by the sky precisely because it could be trusted not to change. The stars your grandparents saw are the stars you see. The constellations drawn by people 4,000 years ago still match the sky over your house tonight. Every generation that ever lived checked the ceiling of the world and found it holding still, and every generation drew the same reasonable conclusion. This is a room, and we live in it, and rooms do not move. So let it land slowly, the way it landed on astronomy itself. The room is emptying. Not the stars overhead, those are staying, and before this night is over, you will know exactly why they stay. And that answer is going to matter more than almost anything else I tell you. But nearly everything beyond them, the great population of other galaxies that fills the darkness past our own, is moving away from us. All of it. In every direction. Right now, while you lie still under a ceiling that is holding still, the largest structures in existence are getting farther from you, and they are doing it faster with every year that passes. The exits are moving. I want to say that sentence once, gently, and let it go for now, but hold on to it, because it is going to come back at the end of the night carrying far more weight than it carries at this moment. Here is the strangest part of the whole story, and it is a good place to begin. We found this out before we understood a single thing about it. The discovery was not a triumph of theory. Nobody predicted it, nobody was looking for it, and the man who made the measurements had no idea what they meant. He was not even studying galaxies, because in his day nobody knew there were other galaxies. His name was Vesto Slipher, and in 1912 he was working at the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona, a private observatory on a pine-covered hill built by a wealthy Bostonian who mostly wanted to find canals on Mars. Slipher had quieter assignments. His telescope was a refractor with a lens 24 inches across, modest even by the standards of the day, and his instrument was a spectrograph, a device that does something almost absurdly patient. It takes the light of one faint object and spreads it out into a rainbow so that the chemical fingerprints hiding in the light can be read like lines on a page. To do this with something as dim as a nebula, Slipher had to hold his telescope on the same target night after night, sometimes exposing a single photographic plate for 20, 30, 40 hours spread across a week of dark skies, guiding by hand in the Arizona cold. One measurement was a month of a man's life. The targets were the spiral nebulae, faint, milky whirlpools of light scattered around the sky. Nobody knew what they were. The safe opinion in 1912 held that they were clouds of gas inside our own system of stars, little eddies in the one and only galaxy, because the one and only galaxy was the universe, and that was that. Slipher's job was simply to measure how they were moving. Light carries its motion with it. If a source of light is coming toward you, its waves arrive slightly compressed, shifted toward the blue end of the rainbow. If it is moving away, the waves arrive slightly stretched, shifted toward the red. Read the shift, and you have read the speed. It is the same principle that lets a police radar read a car, applied to objects whose distance nobody even knew. His first result, in the winter of 1912, was the Great Nebula in Andromeda, the largest and brightest of the spirals, the one you can just see with your own eyes from a dark field on an autumn night, a small grey smudge, the apparent size of your fingertip held at arm's length. Slipher developed his plates and found Andromeda's light shifted toward the blue, and not by a little. The nebula was approaching us at roughly 300 kilometers every second, about 670,000 miles per hour, several times faster than anything astronomers had ever clocked. The number was so far outside experience that Slipher himself hesitated to trust it, and colleagues openly wondered whether the young man in Flagstaff had made a mistake. Remember that first measurement, by the way. Andromeda, the very first galaxy ever clocked, was coming toward us, not running away. That small detail is a seed, and it will grow into the most comforting fact of this entire night. Then Slipher kept going, plate after plate, year after year, one nebula a month, and the pattern that emerged was nothing like Andromeda. The Sombrero Nebula, moving away at 1,000 kilometers per second. Another spiral, away, another, away, and faster still. By 1917, he had gathered the motions of 25 spiral nebulae, and 21 of the 25 were receding, fleeing, if you wanted a dramatic word for it, at speeds of hundreds and thousands of kilometers per second, speeds that made everything else in the sky look parked. Blue shifts should have been as common as red shifts. If the nebulae were simply drifting about at random, roughly half should approach and half retreat, the way cars on a distant highway come and go in both directions. Instead, almost the whole sky was going one way, out. Sit with how strange that is for a moment, because the strangeness is the discovery. It is as if you stood in a field at night, watched the taillights of every car on every road within 100 miles, and found that all of them, on every road, in every direction, were driving away from the particular field you happened to be standing in. You would check your eyes. Then you would check the cars. And then you would be left with a question that sounds almost childish, and is actually one of the oldest and largest questions a person has ever asked. Why would everything, everywhere, be leaving? There is a moment worth pausing on. In August of 1914, when Slipher stood up at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society and read out his velocities to a room full of colleagues. These were careful, skeptical people, professionally allergic to big claims, and they knew exactly what those numbers meant, even if no one knew what they were for. The measurements were superb, the speeds were real, and the sky was doing something nobody had authorized. The room gave him a standing ovation, a thing that almost never happens at scientific meetings, then or now. And somewhere in that applauding audience, according to the accounts, sat a 24-year-old graduate student from Missouri named Edwin Hubble, who would spend the next 15 years of his life turning Slipher's mystery into the organizing fact of the cosmos. The applause is the part I want you to keep. Before anyone understood the expansion of the universe, before the phrase even existed, a room full of the world's most careful sky watchers heard the numbers and understood instantly that everything had changed. Slipher could not answer his own question, though. No one could. There was no theory that predicted a sky full of receding nebulae, no framework waiting to receive the news. The measurements sat there for years, accurate, repeatable, and completely unexplained, a set of numbers from a quiet man at a small telescope that happened to contain the biggest fact ever recorded about the universe. Science is often told as a story of ideas that go looking for proof. This one ran backward. The proof arrived first, patiently, on glass plates in Arizona, and then the world had to spend a decade growing an idea large enough to hold it. And the idea, when it finally arrived, would turn out to be stranger than the measurements themselves. Because the obvious explanation, the one your mind has probably already reached for, is that the nebulae are moving away from us, the way birds scatter from a field when something startles them. Objects, fleeing through space, away from some center, and for some reason we are standing at the middle of the panic. That explanation feels natural. It is also, in almost every detail, wrong. What is actually happening out there is not a flight and not an explosion, and we are not at the center of anything, because it has no center at all. What Slipher had photographed, without knowing it, was not the motion of things through the universe. It was the universe itself, doing something nobody had imagined a universe could do. What that something is, what is actually growing out there in the dark between the galaxies, and what it has quietly decided about how much of the sky you may ever touch, that is where we go next. Picture a loaf of raisin bread rising in an oven. It is an old image, used by a century of physics teachers, and it has survived because nothing better has ever been found. The dough is studded with raisins, and as the loaf rises, the dough between the raisins swells. No raisin swims through the dough. No raisin goes anywhere at all, in the sense of pushing past its neighbors. And yet every raisin watches every other raisin move away from it, because the stuff between them is growing. A raisin 1 inch away drifts to 2 inches. A raisin 10 inches away drifts to 20, covering 10 times the distance in the same time, which is to say, receding 10 times faster. Every raisin sees the same thing. Every raisin, if raisins could think, would conclude that it sat at the center of the loaf and that all the others were fleeing from it personally. That is what Slipher photographed. The galaxies are the raisins. The dough is space itself. This is the idea the 1920s finally grew large enough to hold, and I want to walk through it slowly, because everything else tonight stands on it. The galaxies are not flying away from us through space, the way shrapnel flies from an explosion. Space itself, the emptiness between the galaxies, the thing you have spent your whole life assuming, is just absence, just nothing, just the gap where objects are not, is growing. New distance is coming into existence between things that are not moving. The galaxies are, for the most part, sitting nearly still in their own neighborhoods, like the raisins. And the between is doing all of it. I know how that sounds. It sounds like a lawyer's distinction, the kind of thing that means whatever you need it to mean. So let me show you the difference it makes. Because the two pictures, things fleeing through space versus space growing between things, make completely different predictions. And the sky has voted. If the galaxies were shrapnel from some ancient explosion, there would be a place where the explosion happened, a center, emptied out, with everything rushing away from it. Galaxies on one side of the sky would look different from galaxies on the other. We would see the pattern of a blast, and we could point to the middle of it. But that is not what the sky shows. The recession is the same in every direction, to the finest precision we can measure. Every distant galaxy is moving away from us, at a speed set only by its distance, never by which patch of sky it sits in. There is no thin direction, no crowded direction, no scar. And here is the part that quietly dissolves a fear you might not have noticed you had. In the rising loaf, every raisin sees exactly this. The view from our galaxy, everything receding, faster with distance, the same in all directions, is precisely the view from every other galaxy. An astronomer, 30 million light-years away, in a galaxy we can barely photograph, looked up tonight, if anyone was there to look, at a sky in which everything recedes from them, and we are part of the fleeing crowd. Nobody is at the center. There is no center, any more than there is a raisin at the middle of the surface of the bread, or a city at the center of the surface of the earth. The expansion is not happening away from somewhere. It is happening everywhere, to the distances themselves. The light tells the same story, and the light is where the proof lives. When we say a galaxy's light is shifted toward the red, the shrapnel picture explains it one way. The galaxy was rushing away when the light left, so the waves left already stretched, the way a siren drops in pitch as the ambulance pulls away. But the growing space picture says something stranger and lovelier. The light left its galaxy perfectly ordinary. Then it spent millions of years crossing space toward us, and the space it was crossing grew while the light was in it. The waves themselves were stretched in transit, like a drawing on a sheet of rubber being gently pulled wider the whole time for the whole journey. The redshift of a galaxy is not really a record of how fast it was moving. It is a record of how much the universe grew while the light was on its way. Every photon arriving at every telescope tonight is a piece of measuring tape, and printed on it is the honest history of how much bigger everything got during the trip. And we have caught the stretching in the act at a scale no ambulance could fake. The oldest light in existence, the flash released when the universe was young, which we will visit properly later tonight, set out as a warm orange glow, the light of a cosmos glowing at about 3,000 degrees. It has been traveling ever since, and the space it crossed has stretched its waves by a factor of about 1,100. It arrives today not as a glow, but as a faint microwave hiss. Its waves pulled 1,000 times longer than they were born, a signal so chilled by the growth of the universe that it now whispers at less than 3 degrees above absolute zero. Nothing fleeing through space does that to light. Only space itself, growing under the light's feet for 13 billion years, does that. There is a question that always arrives at this point, and it deserves a straight answer. If space is growing, what is it growing into? The question feels unavoidable, because every growing thing you have ever seen, the loaf, a balloon, a city, grows into room that was already there, waiting. But that is a fact about things inside the universe, not a rule the universe itself has to obey. The expansion is not the outer surface of the cosmos, advancing into some warehouse of pre-existing emptiness. It is the distances inside the universe, all of them, everywhere, gently increasing. Nothing needs to be consumed, and no frontier needs to be crossed, because more of the inside is simply coming to exist. If the universe is infinite, and every measurement we have is consistent with that, then it was infinite already, and an infinite thing has no edge to push outward and nowhere else to be. What grows is not the territory. What grows is the between. The universe is not moving into new rooms. The rooms themselves are getting longer. Now, before the raisin bread misleads you the way it has misled generations of students, let me tell you where the picture breaks, because the place where it breaks is the most important fact of the night, and it is the reason you exist. In a real loaf, the raisins themselves swell as the dough rises. In the universe, they do not. The expansion of space does not expand the galaxies, does not expand the stars, does not expand the earth, your house, your body, or the atoms you are made of. You are not slowly growing along with the cosmos. The reason is that the stretching of space is not a force with a will. It is more like a tendency, a gentle, patient inclination of distances to grow, and it is astonishingly weak at close range. Anywhere that matter has gathered and things actually hold each other, the gravity binding the Earth to the Sun, the gravity binding 200 billion stars into our galaxy, the electric grip binding the atoms of your hand into a hand, those bonds are overwhelmingly stronger than the tendency of the space between to stretch. The bonds simply win. They do not strain against the expansion, creaking like ropes in a storm. The expansion is not even a serious contender inside a bound system. Where things hold each other, the distances are set by the holding, and space's inclination to grow is overruled completely, forever. So the truth about your own body, lying still tonight, is this: you are a knot the universe cannot untie. The expansion operates only out in the open, in the enormous, unclaimed emptiness between the galaxies and between the great gatherings of galaxies, where nothing holds anything and the distances answer to no one. Out there, the between grows. In here, where you live inside a galaxy, inside a solar system, inside a body, nothing grows at all. The universe is not one country with one law. It is a scatter of small bound places where holding wins, adrift in an ocean of open space where growing wins. Keep that division in mind. Later tonight it will come back with a name, and it will turn out to be the line the whole story is drawn on, the exact border between what the night sky is allowed to take from you and what it can never, ever touch. But first, the question this part has been walking toward. If space grows, if every stretch of open distance is quietly adding to itself, then how fast? What is the actual rate, in honest units, of the growth of the universe? It sounds like it should be an unimaginable number, something beyond all human reference. The real answer is stranger than that. The number itself is small, almost laughably small. You could hear it and feel relieved. And then, the moment you notice what kind of number it is, not a speed, but a speed for every distance the smallness turns inside out, and the relief goes with it. Because a rate like that compounds. And a thing that compounds across a universe does not stay small. That number is next. The number, when it finally settled, turned out to be this. Space grows by about 70 kilometers per second for every megaparsec of distance. Let me unfold that, one word at a time, because it is the only technical sentence you will need tonight, and once you feel it, the rest of the night is downhill. A megaparsec is a unit astronomers use for the distances between galaxies, about 3¼ million light-years, a little more than the distance from our galaxy to Andromeda's neighborhood. And the rate means exactly what it says. Take any stretch of open, unclaimed space, 3¼ million light-years long anchor one end near our galaxy, the far end at some galaxy out in the dark, and that stretch of distance grows by about 70 kilometers every second. Not because either end is traveling. The rod itself lengthens. 70 kilometers of new distance, blooming silently somewhere along those millions of light years, every single second, without a sound, without a source, without anyone's permission. Stand at one end of that rod for a moment and try to catch it happening. You cannot. 70 kilometers is roughly what a car covers in an hour on a highway, appearing every second, yes, but appearing along a corridor 3¼ million light-years long. Spread over a span like that, 70 kilometers is nothing. It is a rounding error of a rounding error proportionally, far less than a single atom's width added to the distance between New York and Los Angeles. If you lived 1,000 years staring down that corridor with perfect eyes, you would never notice. The growth of the universe at any one place is the gentlest process in all of physics. Slower than glaciers, slower than the drift of continents, slower than your fingernails proportionally, slower than anything you have ever called slow. So feel free to relax about the word expanding. The terror in tonight's title does not live here at any single spot. It lives in the second half of the sentence per megaparsec, and it climbs into view the moment you ask a simple question: what about a galaxy 2 megaparsecs away? 2 megaparsecs means 2 of those rods laid end to end, and each rod grows by its own 70 kilometers each second. So the total distance grows at 140 kilometers per second. 3 megaparsecs, 210. The rate is not a speed. It is a speed per distance. Every piece of the road between you and a galaxy is growing at once. So the more road there is, the faster the far end pulls away. Double the distance, double the recession. 10 times the distance, 10 times the recession. This is precisely the pattern that fell out of the sky in 1929, when Edwin Hubble, the Missouri graduate student from Slipher's applauding audience, by then the most famous astronomer on Earth, plotted the distances of the galaxies against Slipher's velocities and found a straight line. Farther means faster, in exact proportion. The universe grows everywhere at the same gentle rate, and distance itself multiplies the gentleness into a gale. It took decades of stubborn work to pin the rate down, and the story of the pinning is worth one detour. Hubble's own first estimate of the number, in 1929, was around 500 kilometers per second per megaparsec, 7 times too high, because the stellar yardsticks he relied on were miscalibrated in ways nobody yet understood. 500 was a catastrophe hiding in plain sight. Run a universe backward at that rate, and it is younger than the Earth beneath your bed, which even in 1929 was known to be impossible. For 20 years, the expanding universe carried that embarrassment quietly, until an astronomer named Walter Bade, working through the wartime blackouts of Los Angeles with the Great Telescope on Mount Wilson all to himself, discovered that the yardstick stars came in 2 different kinds, and overnight, in 1952, the universe doubled in size and age. Then it nearly doubled again under further corrections. The number fell from 500 toward 100, then toward the 70s, fought over furiously the entire way for a generation. Half the field said 50 and half said 100, and dinner parties were seated accordingly. It is one of the strangest facts in the history of science. Astronomy knew the universe was growing for decades, before it knew even roughly how fast. The pattern was certain. The speedometer took 70 years to read. Now follow the pattern itself out, because it does not stop, and following it is how you will meet the first genuinely frightening idea of the night. If every megaparsec contributes its 70 kilometers per second, then a galaxy sufficiently far away recedes at any speed you care to name. At around 200 megaparsecs, call it 650 million light-years, galaxies are receding at more than 1% of the speed of light, faster than anything can be pushed by any machine we know how to imagine. At 2000 megaparsecs, the recession passes 1/10 of the speed of light. And if you keep going, and the universe does keep going, you arrive at a distance where the arithmetic hands you something that should not exist. At about 14.5 billion light-years, the accumulated growth of all the road between you and a galaxy adds up to the speed of light itself. And past that line, it keeps adding. Everything beyond that distance, and there is a great deal of universe beyond that distance, is receding from you faster than light. Not slightly faster. Increasingly faster, without limit, the farther out you look. The most distant galaxies ever photographed are receding at several times the speed of light at this moment. There is a galaxy whose baby picture our newest space telescope captured light that left it when the universe was younger than 400 million years, and the stretch of space between here and there is currently growing at more than 3 times the speed of light. That is not a loose way of talking. It is the plain content of the measurement. I know what that collides with. You have been told, correctly, that nothing can travel faster than light. It may be the one law of physics you could recite in your sleep, and tonight of all nights, you should not have to give it up. So here is the resolution, and it is the same distinction we built in the last part, finally earning its keep. The law says nothing can move through space faster than light. It is a speed limit for things, for particles, ships, signals, anything that races past its neighbors. And the distant galaxies are obeying it completely. Through their own local space, they amble along at a few hundred kilometers per second, the same unhurried drift as every other galaxy, our own included. They are not racing anywhere. What outruns light is not a thing. It is the between, the total of all that quietly growing road, and the between is not traveling through anything. No object passes another object faster than light anywhere in the universe tonight. The speed limit stands unbroken. It is simply that the speed limit governs travel, and what the universe is doing out there is not travel. There is no rule against distance itself growing, at any rate, without limit, and so it does. Let the size of that settle for a second, because you now hold an idea most people never encounter in their lives. There are galaxies in your sky, real places with stars and weather, and, for all anyone knows, someone under a blanket listening to their own quiet voice in the dark, that are moving away from you faster than light, in perfect compliance with every law of physics. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is broken. It is only the arithmetic of a growing universe, carried far enough from home. One honest footnote before we move on, because this channel does not hide the seams. That number, 70, it is currently the subject of the loudest argument in cosmology. One method, reading the oldest light in the universe, insists the rate is a shade above 67. Another, climbing from star to star and galaxy to galaxy, insists on 73. The gap is small, the stakes are not, and the two camps have checked their work for a decade without either budging. Later tonight, I will show you why that fight matters and what it might miss. But notice what nobody disputes. Not the growth, not the pattern, not the acceleration still to come in our story. The argument is over the third digit of the speedometer, the road everyone agrees on. So here is where a century of measurement leaves us. Space grows, gently, everywhere. Distance multiplies the growth without limit. And that raised the question that owned astronomy for most of the 20th century. The question your grandparents' textbooks called the biggest in science. All that matter, all those hundreds of billions of galaxies pulling on one another with gravity across the growing dark, surely the pull must be breaking the growth. A stone thrown upward slows. A universe thrown outward should slow too. The only question anyone bothered to ask was how much. Was there enough matter to slow the expansion, stop it, and fold everything back into a final collapse? Or would the growth merely coast, easing off forever without quite stopping? Collapse or coast? Fire or fading? For 70 years, every cosmologist alive understood that those were the only two possible futures, and two teams of astronomers set out in the 1990s, with rival instruments and a genuine rivalry, to force the sky to choose between them. The sky chose neither. What the sky actually said, measured twice, by two teams who did not trust each other, who checked and rechecked because neither could believe their own numbers, is the single most consequential fact discovered in your lifetime. And it is the fact that turns everything I have told you so far from a curiosity about distant lights into the reason this night has the title it has. That is next. To weigh the breaking of the universe, you need two things: a way to measure enormous distances honestly, and patience on a scale that ruins careers. The 1990s finally had both. The honest yardstick came from a particular kind of exploding star. Scattered through every galaxy are white dwarfs, the dense, burned-out cores of stars that have finished their lives, each one the size of the Earth, with the better part of a star's mass packed inside. A white dwarf on its own is stable forever. But a white dwarf with a close companion star can slowly pull material off its neighbor, growing heavier century by century, until it crosses a very specific threshold, about 40% more massive than our Sun, a limit set by the physics of the star's interior, the same everywhere in the universe. The instant it crosses that line, it detonates. And because every one of these explosions is triggered at the same threshold by the same mechanism, every one detonates with nearly the same intrinsic brilliance, a flash, at peak, of around 5 billion times the light of the Sun, bright enough to be picked out across most of the observable universe. Astronomers call them Type 1a supernovae. For our purposes, they are standard candles, light bulbs of known wattage, distributed through the cosmos. If you know how bright the bulb truly is, and you measure how bright it looks, the dimming tells you the distance plainly, mechanically, with almost nothing left to argue about. Find enough of them, at enormous range, and you can chart how the universe has grown over billions of years, the way tree rings chart the growth of a forest you never watched. Two teams set out to do exactly that, and it matters to the story that there were two. Because they were rivals, they used different methods, different telescopes, different software, and they were each rooting hard for the other to be wrong. The first, the Supernova Cosmology Project, had been at it since 1988, led by Saul Perlmutter at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California, a physicist by training, an outsider to astronomy, whose team had spent years inventing the technique of catching these rare explosions on demand, batch by batch, before skeptical astronomers believed it could be done at all. The second, the High Z Supernova Search Team, formed in 1994 around Brian Schmidt, a young astronomer working from Australia, with much of the decisive analysis falling to Adam Rees, then, in his 20s, at Berkeley. Between them, across the mid-1990s, the two teams gathered dozens of these standard candles at distances of billions of light-years, each one a snapshot of how fast the universe was growing billions of years ago, to be compared against how fast it grows today. Everyone on both teams knew what the answer would be. The universe is full of matter. Matter pulls. Therefore, the expansion must be slowing. The only live question the entire point of the decade of work was how much. A strong braking meant the universe would someday halt and collapse. A gentle braking meant it would coast outward forever. Slowing hard or slowing softly. Those were the two answers on the table. The two futures physics had allowed anyone to imagine for 70 years. The teams were simply racing each other to read the dial first. And then the data came in, and the distant supernovae were too dim. Not dramatically. 10, 15, 25% dimmer than they should have been. But consistently, explosion after explosion, in both teams' data, gathered through different instruments by people who did not share their methods with each other. Dimmer means farther. The supernovae were farther away than they had any right to be. Between the ancient moment when each star detonated and the present moment when its light arrived, the universe had grown more than even the gentlest braking allowed. There was only one way for the numbers to come out like that, and it was the one possibility nobody had put on the table. The expansion of the universe is not slowing down at all. It is speeding up. I want to slow down here, because this is the moment the whole night turns on, and it deserves to be felt at human scale rather than announced. Put yourself inside those weeks, in late 1997 and early 1998, in a handful of offices in California and Australia. A young researcher runs the analysis, and the acceleration falls out of the arithmetic, and his first reaction, Rees said this plainly, afterward is not excitement. It is the certainty that he has made an error. An acceleration was not a bold result. It was a wrong result, the kind of thing that means a minus sign is flipped somewhere in 10,000 lines of code. So he checks. He checks for days, then weeks, the calibrations, the dust corrections, the software, the arithmetic, everything, hunting for the mistake, with the specific dread of someone who knows that publishing this and being wrong would follow him forever. And the mistake refuses to be found. Across the world, the rival team is quietly living the same weeks, hunting the same phantom error through entirely different code and not finding it either. Brian Schmidt described his own reaction in those days with a phrase that has followed the discovery ever since, somewhere between amazement and horror. Amazement, because the universe had just done something no living scientist had seriously imagined. Horror, because he was sure, both teams were sure, that the moment they announced it, the error would surface and the embarrassment would be total. Sit inside that for one more breath, because it is one of the loneliest situations in the history of science. For a few weeks, a couple of dozen human beings were the only people on Earth who knew that the future of the universe was not what everyone believed, and none of them wanted it to be true, and all of them would have been relieved to be wrong. There was no triumph in those offices. There was checking, and more checking, and the slow, cold surrender to what the sky was insisting on. When the two rival teams finally compared conclusions and found they matched same dimming, same acceleration, reached separately down two different roads, the field capitulated with remarkable speed, precisely because the rivalry had done its work. The journal Science named it the breakthrough of the year for 1998. 13 years later, Perlmutter, Schmidt, and Rees shared the Nobel Prize in Physics. The result has been remeasured, cross-checked, and confirmed by entirely independent methods for more than 2 decades, since by the patterns in the universe's oldest light, by the arrangement of galaxies across billions of light years, and it has never once budged. The universe is accelerating. That is now among the most solidly established facts in all of science, and it was discovered by people who spent weeks trying to prove themselves wrong. Something, then, is pressing outward. Something wound through every stretch of open space is driving the distances apart, harder now than in the past, gaining on gravity everywhere, winning. Nobody knows what it is. The name it was given, dark energy, is not an explanation. It is a placeholder, a label on a locked box, chosen by the cosmologist Michael Turner, precisely because it commits to nothing. What the measurements do tell us is how much of it there is, and the answer is humbling. Adding up everything the universe contains, dark energy is about 68% of the total. The matter in all the galaxies, every star, every planet, every atom of every living thing, plus all the unseen dark matter holding the galaxies together, comes to barely a third. The largest single ingredient of existence, by a wide margin, is the unidentified something in the emptiness that is pushing the emptiness apart. Everything astronomy has ever photographed is the minority of the universe. The majority is the push. There is one grace note in the discovery, almost too neat to be true. 80 years earlier, Einstein had written a term into his equations, the cosmological constant, a built-in pressure of empty space purely to stop his model universe from moving, and had thrown it away in embarrassment when Hubble showed the universe moves after all. The story goes that he called it the biggest blunder of his life. Dark energy behaves, so far as 2 decades of measurement can tell, exactly like that discarded term, switched on at a strength Einstein never intended. The thing he invented for the wrong reason and disowned turned out to be real and to run the universe. And in case that sounds like physics closing a circle tidily, when theorists calculate from the quantum behavior of empty space how strong such a pressure ought to be, the answer overshoots the measured value by up to 120 orders of magnitude A1, followed by 120 zeros, which is politely described as the worst prediction in the history of physics. We have measured the majority ingredient of reality to exquisite precision, and we do not have the faintest idea what it is. And the push has a property that should make the hair on your arms rise, gently, once you see it. It does not dilute. Matter thins. As space grows, the same galaxies spread through more room, so gravity's grip on the expansion weakens with every passing age. But dark energy appears to belong to space itself, a fixed strength in every cubic meter of emptiness. Make more space, and you have made more push, which makes more space, which makes more push. The universe is compounding, feeding its own growth, an engine whose fuel is the room it creates. And this, at last, is why the discovery of 1998 is not merely a revision to a textbook. A universe that is slowing, however gently, is a universe where patience wins, where everything, given time, remains in reach. A universe that is accelerating is a different kind of place altogether. An accelerating universe draws a line around you. In the next part, I will show you where that line is. It is at a specific distance. It exists tonight. It is sitting in your sky right now, and everything on the far side of it, no matter what it is, no matter what lives there, is already gone. Think about what patience used to be worth. In the universe, everyone believed in. Before 1998, the slowing universe, the coasting universe, distance was never a final verdict. It was only a waiting time. However far away a galaxy sat, however fast the growing space carried it off, a slowing expansion meant the growth was always easing, always coming gently back toward you. Send out a beam of light, and the road ahead of it might grow for a while, but the growing would relent, and the beam would gain, and given enough time, 1 billion years, 100 billion, it did not matter. The universe had nothing but time the beam would arrive. In a slowing universe, every place is reachable, every message eventually delivered, every journey finishable by anyone stubborn enough to stay the course. Nothing was ever truly lost. Everything was merely far. The acceleration ended that. Quietly, without ceremony, the discovery of 1998 took the word far and split it in two, into far but reachable, and gone. Here is why. In an accelerating universe, the road does not relent. The stretch of space between you and a distant galaxy grows, and the growing itself grows, compounding, feeding on the new room it creates. So now there is a genuine race. A beam of light crossing towards some far destination gains ground at a fixed, honest rate, the fastest rate the universe permits, while the remaining road lengthens at a rate that climbs. Close to home, light wins easily. The road between here and Andromeda, between here and the nearest few 100 million light-years of galaxies, grows far too slowly to trouble a beam of light. But with enough distance, the arithmetic crosses over. There is a range at which the road ahead of the beam manufactures new distance exactly as fast as the beam eats the old, and beyond that range, faster. Past that point, the race is not hard. It is over. The light still flies, forever, at full speed, losing ground the entire time. That crossover has a location. You can compute it from the measured expansion and the measured acceleration, and it comes out to about 16 billion light-years from where you are lying right now, a little past the 14.5 billion mark, where recession passes the speed of light, because the geometry gives light one last sliver of workable road beyond it. 16 billion light-years. A sphere of that radius, centered on you, drawn in your sky tonight. Astronomers call its edge the cosmic event horizon, the same phrase they use for the boundary of a black hole. And the borrowed name is earned, because the two boundaries share the only property that matters. They are crossable in one direction only. Anything closer than the horizon can, in principle, still be reached by light, by a signal, by the most patient imaginable voyage. Anything beyond it cannot. Not later. Not eventually. Not with better engines or 1 million years of trying. A signal sent tonight toward a galaxy past that line will simply never arrive, and a signal sent from there tonight will never, in the entire remaining history of the universe, arrive here. I want you to actually take the ride, because the shape of this particular failure is unlike anything in ordinary experience, and feeling it is worth more than any definition. So, you are a pulse of light. You leave the Milky Way tonight, aimed at a galaxy sitting just past 16 billion light-years, and you are moving at the only speed you know, the full speed of causation itself, the fastest anything has ever moved. At launch, the situation looks winnable. Your target is ahead of you, bright and steady. The distance is monstrous but finite. You have forever. And you make progress. This is the part that will stay with you. You make real, honest progress. Always. Every 1,000,000 years, you put another 1,000,000 light-years of road behind you, and the road behind you is truly behind. But while you fly, the road ahead is quietly at work. Every stretch of it is growing, all of it at once, the whole remaining span breeding new emptiness everywhere along its length. And there is so much of it, and the balance is so finely poised at the line you have crossed, that at the end of your first 1,000,000 years of perfect flight, the distance remaining to your target is larger than when you began. Not because you slowed. You never slow. Not because the galaxy fled. It barely moved. The road itself outgrew your progress. Fly on 1,000,000,000 years, 10 billion, and the pattern only deepens. Always advancing, never arriving. The remaining road stretching faster the longer you fly. Your destination's light reddening and dimming ahead of you, like a shoreline seen through thickening fog. You will fly forever. You will never stop, never tire, never miss a step. And you will never get there. Somewhere in the dark tonight, real beams of light are exactly this far into exactly this journey, earnest, flawless, and doomed, still flying, with nowhere they will ever land. That is what the acceleration did to the universe. It did not build a wall. Nothing so honest. A wall stops you. This stops nothing. Every journey is permitted. Certain journeys simply no longer have ends. The universe remains perfectly open in every direction and is, nonetheless, past a certain range, perfectly closed. Two more things about this line, and both of them make it stranger, and one of them makes it almost intimate. The first, a black hole's horizon is a place, a definite surface at a definite location, the same for everyone, which you could travel to and hover near and point at. The cosmic event horizon is not like that. Nobody standing anywhere would ever find it. Travel toward it, and it recedes ahead of you. There is no signpost, no seam, no local fact anywhere in space that says the boundary is here. The horizon is not a feature of the universe. It is a feature of the relationship between the universe and one particular observer, a summary of which races light can still win on your behalf, computed from where you are and how the whole cosmos is growing. Which leads to the second thing, the intimate one. It is yours. The sphere I have been describing, 16 billion light-years in radius, is centered on you. Not on the Earth in some loose way, not on the galaxy, on you, tonight, in your bed, as the point from which all reaching would have to begin. An astronomer in a galaxy 1,000,000,000 light-years away is wrapped in their own sphere, the same size, centered on them, containing a slightly different census of the universe, most of it shared with yours, with 1,000,000,000 light-years of difference at the edges. There are galaxies inside your horizon that are outside theirs, and galaxies inside theirs that you have already lost. Every observer in the universe, tonight, lies at the exact center of their own private allotment of the reachable, every person, every possible mind, anywhere, each sealed in a personal sphere of what may still be touched. The universe does not have one horizon. It has one for each of us. Now come back to your room, because the strangest property of the horizon is not out there. It is in how completely it hides. 16 billion light-years is well inside the range of our telescopes. The observable universe stretches much farther, as we will see in the next part, which means your sky is full of galaxies on both sides of the line. Some of what you can see is on this side, still reachable, still connected to you by roads that light can finish. And most of what you can see is on the far side, visible, photographable, lovely, and beyond every possible reach. Nothing marks the difference. The horizon casts no shadow, draws no circle in the dark, dims nothing. The light from the far side arrives tonight exactly as the light from the near side does old light, faithful light, crossing distances that were smaller when it set out, back when the crossing could still be done. A photograph of the sky shows reachable and unreachable galaxies side by side, identical, and nothing in any measurement of tonight's light alone will tell you which is which. Seeing, it turns out, is not a promise. We can see, right now, enormous regions of the universe that we can never touch, never signal, never affect in any way, regions from which no answer can ever come back. Sight was never evidence of connection. It only ever felt that way, because everything human beings ever looked at before this century happened to be close. And so the obvious question, the one this entire night has been narrowing toward, is the accounting question. The sky is full of galaxies. A line runs through them, invisible, absolute, sorting everything into hours and gone. So how does the ledger stand? Of everything you can see tonight, of all the galaxies in the observable universe, the trillions of islands of stars that the most searching photographs reveal, how much is still on your side of the line? How much of the visible universe can still, in principle, be reached? And how much is already lost while its light still shines in your sky? The answer has been computed, carefully, and it is not a close call. I will give you the honest numbers in the next part. Before I do, take one more slow breath and enjoy, for a final moment, the sky, as you have always thought of it, as a collection of places. Distant places, impossible places, but places in the way a far country is a place, somewhere that exists at the end of some imaginable road. Because the truth is that the sky stopped being that for almost all of its contents, long before you were born. Most of the night sky is not places anymore. Most of the night sky is a museum. To settle the ledger, we need the size of what we can see, and it is larger than it sounds like it should be. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Instinct says then that we can see out to 13.8 billion light years, and no farther the distance light could cover in the time available. But instinct is using a still universe, and ours has been growing the whole while. The most ancient light arriving tonight has indeed been traveling for nearly the entire age of the universe. The subtlety is that its birthplace did not stay where it was. While the light crossed toward us, the road behind it went on stretching, carrying the source farther and farther away, so that by tonight, the matter that emitted the oldest light we can see has been carried out to about 46.5 billion light-years. That is the true radius of the observable universe, a sphere some 93 billion light-years across, centered, once again, on you. Within it, the most searching surveys estimate the galaxies at around 2,000 billion islands of stars, a number the sky earned in the most humbling way possible. Astronomers once pointed a space telescope at a patch of darkness, the apparent size of a grain of sand held at arm's length, a patch chosen precisely because it seemed to contain nothing at all, held it there for 10 days, and collected 3,000 galaxies from that single, empty-looking speck. So there is the visible estate, 46.5 billion light-years in every direction, 2 trillion galaxies deep. And through it, at 16 billion light-years, runs the line. You can feel the shape of the answer already, just from those 2 radii 16 against 46.5. The reachable sphere is not some modest trimming of the visible one. It is a small core in the middle of it. Volume grows fast with radius. A sphere 3 times as wide holds not 3 times, but roughly 27 times the space. Run the honest numbers, and the sphere of everything still reachable amounts to about 6% of the volume of the universe you can see. 94% of the visible universe, as measured in sheer space, in cubic light-years of star-bearing territory, is already on the far side of the line. And counted the way that actually stings by galaxies, the verdict is harsher still, because the great bulk of the 2 trillion lie out in the far volume well beyond the core. Of all the galaxies in the observable universe, the fraction still on our side of the horizon, still reachable, in principle, by a signal we send tonight, is about 3%. 97% of the galaxies in your sky are already gone. Not fading, not endangered, not slipping. Gone. In the only sense that will ever matter for anyone here, permanently beyond reach, beyond signal, beyond consequence. Roughly 1,940 billion galaxies, each with its hundreds of billions of stars, forever off the table. What remains everything still connected to us, everything that can still in any sense be ours, is the 3 in 100 that happen to lie close. Numbers like these refuse to be felt, so let me bring the rate of loss down to the scale of this room. The boundary is not frozen. The compounding acceleration pushes it, in effect, through the crowd of receding galaxies, and stars stream across it continuously. Averaged out, about 20,000 stars pass beyond the line every second. In the time it took you to take your last slow breath, roughly 100,000 suns, many with their own planets, their own weather, their own quiet nights, moved from the category of reachable in principle to the category of never. Since you began listening tonight, tens of millions. This is not a catastrophe on its way. It is the ordinary, current, tonight condition of the universe. A steady hemorrhage of everything, 20,000 suns a second, without a sound. Here is the part I most need you to sit with, though the part that turns the ledger from arithmetic into something you will remember. None of this shows. The 97% did not go dark. Their light still arrives, tonight, on schedule, ancient and perfect. It will go on arriving for eons light that left them long ago, when the gulfs were smaller and crossable, still faithfully completing journeys that began before the door closed. When you look at a long-exposure photograph of the sky, those fields of galaxies like spilled jewelry on black velvet, nearly every object in the frame is on the wrong side of the line. You are not looking at the universe the way you look at a landscape, at country you could in principle walk into. You are looking at something much closer to a museum hall after hall of luminous exhibits, each one real, each one honestly itself, and almost every one of them a portrait of something that can no longer be visited. The night sky is a museum of things that are already gone. Hold on to that sentence. It is going to return much later tonight, meaning something gentler than it means right now. If you want a single exhibit to stand for all of it, take the current record holder. In 2024, the James Webb Space Telescope confirmed the most distant galaxy ever identified, a small, fierce thing, whose light set out when the universe was younger than 300 million years, a newborn cosmos still assembling its first generations of stars. The light traveled for over 13 billion years to reach the telescope's mirror. And in all that time, the road behind it stretched so relentlessly that the galaxy itself now lies about 34 billion light-years away, more than twice as far as the horizon. It crossed the line billions of years ago. Think about what that photograph actually is. The most celebrated image of the most distant thing our species has ever seen is, by construction, a portrait of a place no one from here can ever go, taken with light that escaped just early enough to make the crossing before the crossing became impossible. We hang it in articles and textbooks, the way a family hangs a photograph of an ancestor with love and with no expectation of a visit. And notice what the distance does to the word now. Whatever that galaxy is tonight, a grand spiral, a quiet elliptical, a scatter of dead stars. Home to someone is a fact that can never, in the entire future of the universe, have the slightest effect here. No light from its present will ever arrive. No question about its present can ever be answered, or even asked in a way the universe could respond to. For everything beyond the horizon, the phrase, "What is it like there now?" has quietly stopped referring to anything. There is no shared now across that line. There is only the archive, the light, already in transit, the finite stock of images the universe banked before the door shut, still arriving, still beautiful and final. And the museum admits no distinction between its exhibits and its windows. That is the quiet cruelty of it. The 3% that remain reachable hang in the same darkness, shining the same way. Nothing flags them. Andromeda's light and the light of some doomed galaxy, 40 billion light-years out, arrive as the same kind of silver. The sky itself will never tell you which of its lights are still promises, and which are only receipts, records of an account already closed, still being delivered by a postal service too honest to stop. Every night sky you have ever stood under was already mostly receipts. Every night sky anyone has ever stood under was the shepherds naming constellations, the first astronomers grinding their lenses. Every child who ever pointed upward and asked what is out there was pointing, mostly, at mail from closed accounts. The severing of seeing from reaching did not happen in 1998. 1998 is merely when our species found the paperwork. The universe had signed it billions of years before the Earth existed. I will not pretend there is nothing sad in this. There is a particular grief, small but real, in learning that the universe you were shown as a child, the endless frontier, the ocean waiting for ships, was already, mostly, a picture of the past. Whatever we eventually become, however far our descendants travel, the 2 trillion galaxies were never on offer. The offer, it turns out, was always 3 in 100, and shrinking. But before the grief settles in too comfortably, notice something, because your own mind may already have noticed it, somewhere underneath. And it is the correct thing to notice. Everything I have described so far is a wall. An extraordinary wall, invisible, absolute, wrapped around every observer in the cosmos. But a wall, by itself, is not what the title of tonight's video promised you. Nobody calls a landscape a trap merely because it is finite. The far side of an ocean you were never going to cross is not a loss. A border you were never going to visit does not imprison you. If the story ended here, the universe is bigger than our reach. Most of it always was. The end, you could file it away as geography, close your eyes, and be done. A wall is scenery. What makes a wall a trap is what it does next. And there are 3 things I have not told you yet. What this geometry does to everyone else who might live in it. What it is doing to the future's ability to know anything at all, and what it is doing, on a schedule, right now, to the 3%. We are halfway through the night. Before we go on, let me gather the pieces, because they are about to start fitting together. Let us step back for a few minutes and put the pieces on the table, side by side, because we are halfway through the night and the shape of the thing is worth seeing whole, and because, if you have been drifting, this is the place where the whole story reassembles itself and takes you back in. Piece 1. The universe is growing. Not the things in it, the space between them. A century ago, a patient man at a small telescope in Arizona photographed almost every distant thing in the sky moving away from us. And the explanation, when it finally arrived, was not an explosion and not a flight. It was new distance, coming into existence everywhere at once, between everything that nothing holds together. There is no center to it and no edge. Every galaxy watches the same recession. Nobody is being singled out. The between simply grows. Piece 2. The growth is gentle, and it compounds. At any single place, the stretching is slower than anything you have ever called. Slow 70 kilometers of new road per second, spread across a corridor 3.25 million light-years long. But the rate applies to every stretch of open distance at once, so distance multiplies it. Far enough out, the total growth between you and a galaxy exceeds the speed of light legally, quietly, breaking no rule because nothing is traveling. Most of the galaxies you can see are past that mark already. Piece 3. The growth is accelerating. This is the 1998 discovery, the one that arrived over the objections of everyone who made it. Two rival teams, racing to measure how much gravity was breaking the expansion, found instead that something in empty space is pressing it faster, a something that makes up 2/3 of the universe, does not dilute as space grows, and therefore feeds on its own product. More space, more push, more push, more space. The universe is compounding. And piece 4. A compounding universe draws a line. Because the road itself grows faster with distance, there is a range about 16 billion light-years, computed from the measured rates beyond which even light loses the race. Always flying, always advancing, never arriving, while the remaining road outgrows every gain. That line is the cosmic event horizon. It is invisible, it is absolute, it is centered on you, and when you count what lies beyond it, the ledger reads 94% of the visible universe's volume, 97% of its 2 trillion galaxies already there, already unreachable, already gone in every sense that can ever matter, while their light goes on arriving like mail from closed accounts. 20,000 more stars join them every second. The night sky, we said, is a museum of things that are already gone. 4 pieces. Growth. Compounding. Acceleration. The line. Hold them loosely. You do not need to grip anything tonight. But before we ask what they add up to, notice the one everyday belief they have already, quietly, taken from you. It is the belief hiding inside the phrase, given enough time. You have carried it your whole life, and so has our whole species. The faith that time converts the impossible into the merely difficult that any distance yields to enough patience. Any journey completes if the traveler refuses to stop. Every story of exploration ever told rests on it. And in the universe everyone believed in before 1998, it was actually true. A slowing cosmos honors patience without limit, and every destination waits at the end of some sufficiently long road. What the acceleration revoked was not a distance. It was patience itself as a strategy. Past the line, given enough time purchases nothing the road grows faster than forever can spend. There are now destinations, most destinations, for which infinite time, infinite persistence, and the fastest speed permitted by physics together add up to never. That is the assumption the first half of tonight has quietly dissolved. Time is no longer the currency that buys everywhere. It never really was. We simply live too close to home to notice. So, what do the 4 pieces add up to? And notice, just as carefully, what they do not yet add up to. They add up to a boundary. They do not yet add up to the title of this video. I promised you, at the start of the night, not just that the universe is expanding terrifyingly fast, when you have that now, you could explain it to someone tomorrow, but that the expansion is a trap, and that word has been sitting there, unredeemed, for over an hour. I have not forgotten it. A boundary, however enormous, however final, is not a trap. The far shore of an uncrossable ocean is not a cage. A country you were never going to visit takes nothing from you by being unreachable. If the horizon were only geography, a fact about how much universe happens to fall within our allotment, then the honest title for tonight would have been something like, "The universe is bigger than our reach," and you could fall asleep now, mildly melancholy, having learned some very large geography. But it is not only geography, and the difference lives in 3 facts I have been saving. 3 facts that turn a boundary into something with intent, or at least with behavior so consistent it feels like intent. A trap, after all, has 3 properties a mere wall does not. A trap operates on whoever enters it, not just on you, and this geometry operates on every mind that has ever existed anywhere, and I have not yet shown you what it does to them. A trap conceals, and this one is in the middle of concealing itself, right now, in a way that will leave the future unable to discover it was ever caught. And a trap closes not a fixed border, but a tightening one, taking more with every year, on a schedule that is running while you lie here. Everyone else. The concealment. The closing. Those are the 3 facts still owed, and they are the second half of the night. And because the first of them, everyone else, begins with the part of the universe the trap cannot touch, the next stretch of this story is, genuinely, the good news. Before the walls close in, I want to show you the piece of the cosmos that is deeded to you permanently. The piece where gravity, not expansion, writes the law. It is smaller than the whole sky. It is also larger than anything you will ever run out of. Let us go look at what we keep. Start with your own hand, resting on the blanket. It is not expanding. We established why, hours ago, it may feel like now. The electric bonds between its atoms dictate its size, and those bonds are so overwhelmingly stronger than space's gentle tendency to stretch, that the stretching is simply overruled, not resisted, not fought off, but overruled, the way a whisper is overruled by a law. Your hand is the first entry in tonight's inventory of the permanent. Let us walk outward from it, and find the border where permanence ends. The Earth, bound. Gravity holds every stone and every ocean to the center, at strengths the expansion cannot begin to contest. The planet's size is set by rock and iron, not by cosmology. The moon does not drift from us by any cosmic growth, nor the Earth from the sun. The solar system's orbits obey the sun's gravity and nothing else, the same clockwork as always, to the last decimal. The distance from here to the sun is not 1 atom wider tonight on the universe's account. Out through the planets, out past the comets, out across the whole gravitational household of our starbound, all of it, exempt, all of it. Keep going. The stars of the night sky, every star you have ever seen with your own eyes, are fellow citizens of the Milky Way, 100,000 light-years of disk, turning as one gravitational commonwealth, somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars deep. Bound, all of them, wrapped in a single shared halo of unseen matter whose gravity outmuscles the expansion across the entire span. No star in our galaxy is being carried anywhere by the growth of space. The constellations will dissolve over ages, but only because stars orbit and drift within the galaxy. Ordinary motion, family motion, the shifting of relatives around a shared house. The house itself does not stretch. Now take the step that, after everything I have told you tonight, should feel genuinely dangerous. Leave the galaxy. Cross the true intergalactic dark 2.5 million light-years of it, the gulf between our galaxy and the great spiral of Andromeda. This, surely, is where the expansion begins its work. This is open space, galaxy to galaxy distance. the very kind of gulf we have spent all night watching grow. If you have absorbed the first half of the night, every instinct says Andromeda must be receding from us. Andromeda is falling toward us at about 110 kilometers per second. It is worth hearing that twice, because it is the single most reassuring measurement in this entire story, and it has been sitting in the record for over a century, since the very first plate, Slipher, ever developed. Remember, the first galaxy humanity ever clocked was the one coming toward us. The reason is simple and enormous. The Milky Way and Andromeda hold each other. Their mutual gravity, across all those millions of light years, is stronger than the expansion between them. And so, the expansion between them loses not partially, not temporarily. Loses. The two great spirals have been falling together for billions of years, and in about 4 to 5 billion years they will meet. Not a collision in any violent sense. A person needs to picture. Stars are so widely spaced that the galaxies will pass through and around one another, like two clouds of fireflies, merging over a field, and over the ages that follow, they will settle, together with their families, into a single, enormous, quiet galaxy. The nearest great structure in our sky is not being taken from us. It is moving in. We are, in the long run, not neighbors, but one household. And the household is larger still. Around the two great spirals gathers the whole local group, roughly 80 galaxies, Andromeda and us, the Triangulum spiral and a crowd of dwarf galaxies, each a settlement of millions or billions of stars spread across about 10 million light-years, all bound, all held, all permanent. 10 million light-years, ringed by an invisible property line, inside which the expansion of the universe has no vote and never will. Total the stars of the local group, and you arrive somewhere near 1 trillion. 1 trillion stars, deeded to this gravitational household in perpetuity, exempt from every horizon, every recession, every closing door in tonight's story. It is worth lingering on the household's smaller members, because the inventory of the permanent should feel inhabited, not abstract. From the southern half of the Earth, on any clear, dark night, you can see two of them with your own eyes. The Magellanic Clouds, a pair of soft, luminous smudges like torn-off pieces of the Milky Way, each one a genuine galaxy, billions of stars, star-forming nurseries, supernova remnants, orbiting ours the way moons orbit a planet. They are bound to us. So is the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, currently being slowly absorbed into our own disk. So are dozens of fainter companions with homely catalogue names, each a village of stars in orbit around the Commonwealth. Andromeda keeps its own retinue of satellites, as does Triangulum. This is what the local group actually is, when you stop drawing it as dots. Two great spiral cities, a third smaller one, and scores of towns and villages, all traded and shared, and slowly merging across 10 million light-years, every one of them staying. When astronomers run the far future forward, the villages fold into the cities and the cities into each other, and the household ends as a single, enormous, elderly galaxy, but it ends together. Nothing bound is on the departure list. So let me now say the sentence this entire part exists to plant, because it is the line the rest of the night and honestly the rest of the universe's history will be drawn on. Gravity wins here. Expansion wins everywhere else. Hold on to that. It sounds like a small rule of thumb. It is actually the complete map of the future. Everything bound stays. Everything unbound goes. And the border between them was fixed by how much matter happened to gather where, back when the universe was young. Nothing bound has ever been unbound by the expansion. No galaxy has ever been stretched apart, No cluster peeled away from itself. No orbit widened. The trap we have been circling all night has a strict jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction stops at gravity's fence. Which means one more honest admission belongs here, and it costs the title of this video something to make it. If there are other minds in our galaxy tonight, other listeners under other blankets, circling any of those hundreds of billions of suns, the expansion of the universe has nothing to do with why we have not met them. Inside the galaxy, the trap does not operate. The gulfs between the stars are hard. Earlier videos on this channel have spent whole nights on exactly how hard. But they are stable, fixed distances, crossable in principle, patient with any species that learns persistence. The same holds across the whole local group. The famous silence of our own sky, the absence of visitors, the empty radio bands, whatever, explains that, and this channel has walked those questions before. It is not tonight's mechanism. The expansion has never kept anyone in the Milky Way from anyone else in the Milky Way. That is not tonight's trap. Where then does the border run? Just past the fence. The Virgo cluster, 65 million light-years out, our nearest great city of galaxies, 2,000 strong, not bound to us receding and going. The magnificent supercluster maps Laniakea, our named neighborhood of 100,000 galaxies across 520 million light-years, describe flows and currents, not bonds. Nothing at that scale holds, and every galaxy on those maps beyond our little group is scheduled to leave. The universe's real estate resolves, everywhere, into the same two categories: small bound islands, households like ours, some smaller, some far grander, separated by open water that widens without limit. Every mind that will ever exist, anywhere, lives on one of the islands. Every island keeps what it holds. And between the islands, the water is rising. Which brings us, at last, to everyone else. Because here is the thought that should be forming now. If the trap does not operate inside an island, if every civilization keeps its own galaxy, its own group, its own trillion stars, then perhaps the trap costs nobody in anything real. Perhaps every mind in the universe is content on its island, and the widening water between them is just geography after all. That would be true, except for one thing minds do. They call across the water. In the next part, we find out what the expansion does to the calling, and this is where the trap stops being an abstraction about volumes and percentages and becomes something that happens to someone. Every fact I have given you tonight applies to everyone. That sentence is easy to say and easy to slide past, so let me hold it still for a moment. The horizon is not our horizon. It is not a fact about the Earth, or about humanity, or about how far our particular species with its particular rockets can travel. It is a fact about the geometry every mind is embedded in. Whatever exists out there among the 2 trillion galaxies, and the honest position is that nobody knows, but the arithmetic of 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of suns, makes the question impossible to wave away every one of those minds, however ancient, however patient, however far beyond us, is wrapped in its own sphere of the reachable, about the same size as ours, centered on itself. Every civilization that has ever existed anywhere holds a maximum possible estate. The region inside its own horizon at the moment it starts reaching. Outside that sphere, its options are identical to ours. Not limited. Not difficult. 0. And that means the 97% runs in every direction, for every one of them. We calculated, earlier tonight, what we have lost. Now, turn the calculation around. because the mirror image is where the loneliness actually lives. To almost every civilization in the observable universe, we are the unreachable ones. Our galaxy sits in the lost 97% of nearly every sky in creation. Whoever is out there in those distant superclusters, whatever they have built, whatever they know, whatever they would think of us, we are, for all but our closest neighbors, permanently on the wrong side of their line, visible in their most searching photographs, perhaps as one more faint smudge in a field of billions, and as absolutely beyond their reach as they are beyond ours. The isolation is not something that happens to us. It is something the universe does to everyone, symmetrically, without exception. But minds do not merely sit on their islands. Minds call across the water. It may be the most characteristic thing minds do, and so the real question is what the expansion does to the calling. And here I have to show you something crueler than a wall, because a wall would simply block the call, and what the acceleration does instead is answer it, for a while. Come, stand inside it. Two civilizations, in two galaxies, in two different superclusters, call the distance 1 billion light-years, far by our standards, nothing by the universe's. Both are old, and both are patient, and one day, one of them catches the other's signal, unmistakably artificial, unmistakably meant. They answer. Now watch the correspondence unfold, in the only tense the universe allows it. The first reply crosses 1 billion light-years of growing road, and takes rather more than 1 billion years to arrive. The answer to the reply sets out across a road now measurably longer, and takes longer still. Neither side experiences a conversation. Each experiences a civilization-defining event once every geological era, a message from the sky, received by beings separated from the ones who sent the last answer by more time than separates you from the first fish. Each message arrives to descendants who know the previous exchange only as history or scripture or legend. And the gaps are not merely long. They are growing, compounding, because the road between the two islands is accelerating apart. The third gap is longer than the second, the fourth longer than the third. The correspondence is not a bridge across the water. It is a countdown, disguised as a bridge. Because there is a last letter, there has to be. At some point in the exchange, and neither side can compute exactly when, though both can prove it is coming, one civilization sends a reply, and while that reply is in flight, the road beneath it crosses the threshold we met 4 parts ago. The remaining distance begins growing faster than light can close it. The message does not stop. Nothing stops. It simply becomes mid-journey, one of those beams we rode earlier, earnest, flawless, and doomed a letter that is now addressed to nowhere reachable, carrying its greetings and its answers, and whatever a dying correspondence chooses to say at the end, outward, forever, undeliverable. And here is the detail I find I cannot put down. Neither side ever learns which letter was the last. The senders die, knowing only that they sent it. The receivers never know it existed. On both islands, the experience is identical, a longer wait than usual, becoming a much longer wait, becoming imperceptibly eternity. The silence of a friend who has not written yet is indistinguishable from the inside, from the silence of a friend who can never write again. Every long conversation across the growing dark ends this way, not with a goodbye, but with a wait that quietly stops being a wait, and neither party is ever told. If the sheer geometry of that does not reach you, its strategy will, because some researchers have followed the logic to its coldest conclusion. In 2013, 2 Oxford researchers, Stuart Armstrong and Anders Sandberg, published a calculation that has circulated in Fermi paradox arguments ever since. They asked, suppose a civilization decided not to call across the water, but to go seriously, permanently, at scale. What could it actually claim? Their answer had two edges. The generous edge, far more than you would guess a mature civilization harnessing the output of a single star for a few hours, could, in principle, launch featherweight, self-replicating probes toward every galaxy it can still reach, seeding millions of them. The engineering they sketched was speculative, but violated nothing. The cold edge, the phrase "can still reach," is doing all the work in that sentence, and its meaning degrades every year. The reachable sphere is not a fixed prize. Roughly 3 more galaxies slip across the line. Annually, 3 galaxies worth of stars and worlds and possible futures, subtracted from the maximum estate of every civilization in our neighborhood of the universe, every year. Forever. In their framing, expansion turns the cosmos into a departure board where every destination is in the final call. For any species that ever intends to reach beyond its island, the price of waiting is not delay. It is deletion, a permanent shrinking of everything it may ever become. A civilization that arose 5 billion years before us could have claimed a sphere of galaxies we can now only photograph. One that arises 100 billion years after us will inherit a departure board with nothing on it. And this, finally, is what the expansion contributes to the great silence, to the famous puzzle of why the universe looks so empty of company. Notice what it does and does not explain, because the honesty matters. It does not explain the silence of our own galaxy. We settled that in the last part inside the island, other mechanisms, other mysteries, other videos. What it explains is why the silence at the largest scales is not evidence of absence. The universe could be teeming, could hold 1 million civilizations per supercluster, empires of 1 billion years' depth, minds beyond all our categories, and the sky would look almost exactly as it looks tonight, because almost all of them are behind the line, where no signal, no probe, no evidence of any kind can ever cross to us. The expansion guarantees that nearly everyone in the universe is, from nearly everyone else's chair, indistinguishable from no one. The great silence needs no explanation for 97% of the sky. Geometry writes it there directly. It also quietly rewrites what listening means. Our species runs real searches, radio telescopes sweeping the sky for anything artificial, surveys alert for structures, no nature builds, and nothing about tonight makes those searches foolish. The island and its neighborhood remain genuinely worth listening to. But the horizon edits the question they are asking. Any signal humanity ever receives, tonight or in 10,000 years, must come from the near universe, from the 3%, our side of the line, our neighborhood of islands, because the other 97% has been censored out of every possible answer. If the universe's civilizations are spread evenly through its galaxies, then for every voice that could ever, under any circumstances, reach our instruments, roughly 30 are permanently inaudible, not quiet, not distant, but stricken from the record by geometry. The silence we measure is not the universe's silence. It is the silence of the sliver we are permitted to poll. Absence of evidence was never absence. Here, the evidence has been formally confiscated. And if you want the symmetry at full weight, put it at the scale of a single mind. Somewhere out there tonight, if minds are common at all, this is a near certainty rather than a poetry. Some particular, someone's galaxy, crossed our line today. While you were making coffee, or driving home, or lying down, the compounding road between here and some inhabited island tipped past the threshold, and every future in which anything of theirs ever touches anything of ours was cancelled, all at once, without a sound. They did not feel it. We did not feel it. Nothing, anywhere, marked it. That is the texture of the trap at civilization scale. Not a slamming of doors, but a continuous, gentle, unmarked cancelling of futures, thousands of stars worth a second, a few galaxies worth a year. Everyone, losing everyone, forever, in perfect silence. There is one more turn of this screw, the cruelest one, and it is pointed at the future. Because everything I have said tonight about the trap depends on being able to see the evidence, the receding galaxies, the stretched light, the ledger of the lost. We can see it. We measured it. That is how this video exists. But the same acceleration that carries the galaxies away is, with perfect thoroughness, carrying away the proof and the beings who come after, on this island and every island, will inherit a sky that has been wiped clean of the whole story. The trap, in other words, is in the middle of hiding itself. That is next. In 2007, two physicists, Lawrence Krauss and Robert Scherer, sat down with the measured expansion, the measured acceleration, and the standard model of the cosmos, and did something almost nobody had bothered to do carefully. They ran the movie forward. Not a million years, not a billion far forward, into the eras when the acceleration has done its full work. The paper they published carries one of the quietest, frightening titles in the scientific literature: The Return of a Static Universe and the End of Cosmology. What it describes is not the end of the universe. It is the end of the universe's ability to be known. Follow the movie with me. It opens on the sky we have tonight. 2 trillion galaxies, 97% already unreachable, but nearly all of them still visible, still sending, the museum fully lit. Run forward a few billion years. The sun swells and dies. The Earth's story ends or moves elsewhere. The Milky Way and Andromeda complete their long fall and merge into a single golden elliptical galaxy, the household consolidated under one roof. Beyond the household fence, the recession compounds. Galaxy by galaxy, the exhibits cross the line, first the far ones, then the nearer, the Virgo clusters 2000, the whole Laniakea neighborhood, everything unbound, each one continuing to shine in the sky long after its crossing, because its old light is still in transit, still faithfully arriving. But watch what happens to each galaxy after it crosses, because the universe does not simply switch its exhibits off. Something stranger happens, and if you have ever read about what an observer sees watching something fall toward a black hole, you will recognize it exactly, played inside out across the whole sky. The galaxy's image persists, but it is built from ever older light, the last photons that escaped across the road before the road outran light entirely. The image reddens. It slows. Its clock, as seen from here, winds down asymptotically. The galaxy's visible history compressing toward one final, frozen frame that dims and stretches and reddens, era after era, without ever quite vanishing, a photograph fading in a locked display case, the caption forever reading as it was once. The universe does not delete its prisoners. It archives them. Over tens of billions of years, the whole sky beyond the household becomes exactly this, a museum of things that are already gone. In the fullest sense, now every exhibit a fading final frame, every caption in the past tense. And then the frames fade below any possible detection light, stretched to wavelengths longer than any instrument could distinguish from nothing, and the museum, wing by wing, goes dark. Krauss and Scherer put rough numbers on the closing time. Within about 100 billion years, several times the current age of the universe. A long time. But not an unimaginable one. Stars will still be shining then. The merged galaxy, still healthy. Every galaxy beyond the local group's merged remnant will have passed beyond any observability whatsoever. Not hard to see. Not faint. Gone from the sky, entirely, with nothing to mark that anything was ever there. Now stand in that future, because someone might. 2 trillion years from now, on a world circling one of the small, red, long-lived stars of the merged galaxy, stars whose fuel economy grants them lifespans 100 times. Our suns, imagine a mind, stepping outside on a clear night and looking up. Above them, their galaxy, a broad, luminous river of ancient stars, lovely, familiar, entirely sufficient. And beyond it, nothing. Not darkness concealing something. Darkness containing nothing. No other galaxies, no faint smudges rewarding better telescopes, no microwave whisper soaking the sky, no stretched light, no recession, nothing to measure, and nothing to miss. This mind belongs, let us say, to a careful species, patient astronomers, honest instruments, rigorous habits, everything we admire in our own best science. They survey the darkness to the limits of technology and find it empty. They measure the motions of their galaxy's stars and find a system at rest, orbiting nothing, receding from nothing. And so they conclude, carefully, correctly, by every standard of evidence available to them, that the universe is one galaxy, floating in an infinite, eternal, static void. A cosmos with no beginning, no expansion, no horizon, no elsewhere. It is the cosmology our own species believed in, 1910, rebuilt at the end of time by flawless reasoning from a censored sky, every observation exact, every inference sound, and the conclusion wrong from its first word. Give that mind one more moment of its night, because the scene deserves its full weight. It stands under a sky that is, by every local measure, generous 100 billion elderly suns, warm worlds, ages of stability ahead. Red dwarfs burn so frugally that the era of starlight has trillions of years left to run. Nothing about its evening feels deprived. It goes inside, adds its measurements to the archive, and writes, in whatever passes for a journal, the sentence its whole civilization's science supports. The universe is our galaxy, and the void, and nothing else, forever. Then it sleeps, the way you are trying to sleep now, under the same physics, inside the same trap, missing only the one thing you have, and it can never get, the evidence. They will have no way to discover the error. That is the sentence to hold. Not, they will struggle. Not, it will take genius. No way the evidence is not hidden in their universe. It is absent from it. The receding galaxies that taught us expansion, gone beyond detection. The background glow that taught us the hot beginning, stretched past every horizon of measurement. Even the chemical fingerprints of the universe's first minutes will have been smeared by 2 trillion years of stellar reprocessing. Every road that led our species to the truth will have been erased behind us. A scientist in that era who proposed, as speculation, the true history, an expanding cosmos of 2 trillion galaxies, born hot, accelerating apart, now vanished, would be proposing something their instruments could never support. Unfalsifiable, extravagant, faintly mystical. The truth about the universe will still exist. It will simply have become, in that era, a bad hypothesis. There is an objection worth taking seriously, because it is the one a hopeful mind reaches for immediately. Could the knowledge simply be handed down? Suppose a civilization lasts hours, or any other, from the lit era into the dark one. It carries records, the photographs, the measurements, the whole account of the 2 trillion galaxies and the growing space. Its descendants in the sealed age would not need to discover the truth. They would inherit it. And the answer is, yes, they would inherit it, and that is precisely the problem. They would inherit it the way we inherit the myths of vanished civilizations, as claims from an era they cannot audit, describing a sky nobody can check, resting finally on trust in ancestors, rather than on anything the universe will confirm. Between a true archive that says the sky was once full of galaxies and a beautiful invention that says the same, their instruments could never distinguish. Knowledge, in science, is not a document. It is a document plus the standing possibility of checking. And the checking is what the expansion revokes. However carefully the truth is preserved, in the dark era it changes category, from science, which anyone can verify, into testimony, which everyone must take on faith. Some there will believe the old records. Some will not. And the honest ones will have to admit that the sky, consulted directly, sides with the doubters. The universe will not only have hidden its history, it will have arranged for its history to sound like a legend. And once you have stood in that future, turn around and look back at tonight, because this is the part of the whole story that lands nearest to home, and it is not about them. It is about you. The only reason our species knows any of this expansion, acceleration, horizon, trap is timing. We happen to arise while the evidence is still in the sky, early enough that the galaxies still shine on every side, late enough that minds exist to read them and instruments exist to check. That is a window. It opened when the first galaxies formed and thought became possible somewhere. It closes when the last outside light fades, and wide as it sounds, it is a sliver of the universe's total future which runs on, dark and unreadable, for spans beside which 100 billion years is the first tick of the clock. Nearly every mind that will ever exist on any island in any era will live after the window shuts under a sealed sky, inside the trap, with the trap's existence not merely unknown but undiscoverable. Count minds across all of time, and knowing the truth about the universe is not the normal condition of intelligence. It is a brief, local, unrepeatable inheritance, and you are one of its heirs, tonight, lying in the last age when the sky still tells its own story. I find, turning that thought over, that it will not stay frightening. It keeps tipping into something else, a kind of privilege so steep it feels like being personally addressed. The universe is forgetting itself, wing by wing, on a schedule, and for one thin, bright interval, it produced witnesses. You are not merely learning cosmology tonight. You are performing the act the future will be built without, reading the sky while the sky can still be read. The forgetting is coming. But you are here, before it awake, in the lit museum, in the hour before closing. So the trap conceals itself. That is the second property, banked. One property remains the one I have been promising since the halfway mark, the one that turns geometry into schedule. The door is not merely closed past a certain line. The door is closing. Now. Tonight. On the 3%, and the pace of its closing is the last hard fact of the night. A trap that operates on everyone. A trap that conceals itself. Tonight's last hard fact is the third property, and it is the one that separates a trap from every mere wall in existence. The door is still moving. Everything I have told you could have been true of a static boundary, a line drawn once, long ago, dividing ours from gone, fixed forever afterward. That universe would be strange enough. It is not our universe. Because the expansion accelerates, the border between reachable and unreachable is not a fence standing still. It is a tide coming in. The compounding push carries galaxy after galaxy across the threshold, continuously, and every crossing is what we have already learned. Crossings are permanent, silent, unmarked. The ledger I read you at the halfway point, 94% of the volume, 97% of the galaxies, is not a historical fact about how things settled. It is a running total, and it is running. You have already met the pace, but let me set it where you can feel it. 20,000 stars cross the line every second, on average worked out across the whole sky. Put that against the clock of your own body. In the time of one slow, deliberate breath, the kind you may be taking now, about 100,000 suns move from could, someday, to never. While you listen to this video, tens of millions. By the time you wake tomorrow, a few billion more, a full galaxy's worth of stars, give or take, subtracted from the maximum future of everything that exists, in one night, without a sound. Zoom the clock out, and the same current reads, roughly 3 entire galaxies per year, on average, leaving the reachable universe of every observer in our cosmic neighborhood. 3 a year. It has been running at roughly this pace since before the Earth formed, and it does not pause, and nothing in physics can pause it. I want to be careful with the feeling of this, because your mind is reasonably asking why it should matter. We were never going to visit those galaxies. Not this century, not this millennium. Our species cannot yet reliably visit its own moon. The loss is a loss of options nobody was exercising. All true. But notice what kind of thing is actually being subtracted, because it is not travel plans. It is possibility itself, in the strictest sense physics recognizes. For every galaxy that crosses, every future in which anything from here ever affects anything there, or anything from there ever matters here, ceases to be writable. Not unlikely. Not remote. Removed from the set of things the universe can ever again contain, for us and for our descendants, and for whatever our descendants become, no matter what any of them ever learn to do. The door is not closing on humanity's itinerary. It is closing on the total possible biography of everything on this island. Once you see it that way, the indifference of the pace, 20,000 a second, unfelt, unannounced, stops being a mercy and becomes the point. Futures are being cancelled at industrial rate, and the universe does not consider it worth mentioning. And now I owe you the answer to the objection that has been waiting politely since the door started closing. Surely this is temporary. Surely this is a problem of our era's engines. Everything in the history of technology says walls fall distances that stopped our ancestors are nothing to us. Speed has multiplied 1,000,000-fold. Give 1,000 years, 1,000,000, and whatever wall stands now will be a museum piece. It is the most reasonable objection in the world. It is the one your own mind has probably been drafting all night, and the answer is no, and the reason is the strangest single fact in tonight's story. Every previous wall in history was a wall of difficulty. Crossing cost more than we could pay, until it did not. This is not a wall of difficulty. The race between light and the growing road is not lost because light is too slow. Light is the fastest thing permitted, the speed at which cause itself travels, and the road outgrows it. Build any engine you like. Its best possible performance is to approach, never reach, the speed the road is already beating. Run the comparison honestly, and the conclusion is almost comic. A probe at half the speed of light and a probe at 99% of the speed of light reach almost the same set of galaxies before the door shuts on each of them. The gain from that entire heroic doubling of speed from a civilization's whole engineering ascent is a sliver at the margin. The binding constraint was never the engine. It is the launch date. Every year of delay costs more than any year of engineering can ever buy back. Against this door, technology does not accumulate. Only earliness counts, and earliness is the one resource that cannot be manufactured. There is a fair question hiding under all this, and answering it adds the last piece of the schedule's shape. If the door has been closing at this pace forever, why is anything still reachable at all? Why, after 13.8 billion years, do we still have our 3% rather than nothing? The answer is that the door has not been closing forever, and the timing of when it started is one of the strangest facts in cosmology. For most of the universe's history, matter was dense enough that gravity ruled the whole account. The expansion was slowing, patience worked, everything was gradually coming more within reach, not less. Dark energy was there all along, a fixed whisper in every cubic meter, but in a young, crowded universe, the whisper was buried. Then the expansion thinned the matter out, century of the cosmos by century of the cosmos, until only about 5 billion years ago, right around the time the Sun and the Earth were forming, the whisper finally outweighed the crowd. The acceleration switched on, cosmically speaking, yesterday. The door began closing just as our solar system's story began. The going out of business sale opened its doors more or less alongside our address. Cosmologists find the timing genuinely uncomfortable. It is called the coincidence problem. This suspicious fact that observers seem to show up precisely in the brief era when dark energy and matter are still comparable, when the acceleration has begun, but the sky is still full, and nobody knows whether the timing is chance, selection, or a clue to something deeper. But for tonight's purposes, it explains the state of the shelves. The sale is young. We are not latecomers to an ancient clearance. We are standing in the first hours of it, which is exactly why there is still, for a while, so much left to lose, and why the losing runs so fast. It also sharpens what kind of thing the reachable universe is. It is not a renewable territory, like a frontier that regrows behind explorers. It is an endowment, a fixed, one-time allotment of contact, granted in full at the moment the acceleration began, spending itself down ever since, never to be topped up. Every era inherits the remainder. On the scale of the universe's total future, those dark trillions of years we visited in the last part, the entire spending period is an eye blink at the very beginning, a brief opening flourish, in which everything that will ever be mutually touchable is decided, followed by an endless quiet in which the accounts are closed and nothing moves between the islands ever again. The whole social history of the universe, in the widest sense, every contact any island will ever have with any other, has to happen now, in the flourish, or never. Which lands us somewhere genuinely strange, and I want to name it plainly, because it is the closest tonight's story comes to an actual moral. The universe's carrying capacity for connection, the total amount of meeting, reaching, knowing, and touching that can ever happen in it, peaked early and has been draining ever since. The best time to launch, for every civilization that will ever exist, was always as early as possible. Every era inherits a smaller maximum than the one before. A going out of business sale, I called it earlier, and the phrase is exact. Everything must go. The stock is not being replenished, and the shelves empty at 20,000 suns a second, whether or not anyone was ever going to buy. We arrived, every civilization arrives mid-sale, with most of the stock already gone. Watching the rest leave on a schedule no ingenuity can slow. If you want the price of a single year in the plainest units, 3 galaxies is something like 1 trillion suns, 1 trillion possible worlds, 1 trillion possible histories struck from the maximum future annually. No war, no catastrophe, no failure of imagination in all of human history has ever cost 1,000th of 1,000th as much as one ordinary, uneventful year of cosmic expansion costs everyone, everywhere, automatically. It is the largest ongoing event in existence, and it is composed entirely of nothing happening, anywhere, forever. That is the trap, nearly complete. The walls recede faster than pursuit. The evidence of the walls is being erased, and the enclosed allotment shrinks on a schedule, indifferent to everything. One piece of business remains before I can pay off the title in full, and honesty requires it. Everything tonight rests on measurements of the rate, of the acceleration, of the geometry, and measurements can be wrong. People have spent a century attacking these particular measurements, some brilliantly, a few desperately, because nobody especially wanted this universe to be the real one. If the trap has a flaw, it will be found in those attacks, in the audits, the rival theories, the anomalies that will not close. So before the final answer, the audits. What has held? What has wobbled? And the one crack in the wall that, as of tonight, is genuinely still open. Nobody wanted this universe. That is worth saying plainly, because it is the best credential the measurements have. At every stage of tonight's story, the people doing the measuring were hoping for a different answer, and the sky refused them every time. A century of the smartest available humans has attacked every load-bearing beam in the structure I have built tonight, for the best possible motive. Whoever brings one down becomes immortal. Here is how those audits have gone. The oldest attack aimed at the foundation itself. Maybe the redshifts do not mean growth at all. In 1929, the same year Hubble published his law, the physicist Fritz Zwicky proposed what came to be called tired light, the idea that space is not growing, and light simply loses energy on its long crossings, arriving reddened from fatigue rather than from stretching. It was a serious idea from a serious scientist, and it survived as a genuine rival for decades, because for decades no observation could tell the two stories apart. Then the observations arrived, and they were merciless in triplicate. First, if space stretches light, it must stretch time. Along with it, a distant explosion should visibly run in slow motion, its weeks of brightening and fading dilated by exactly the factor its redshift predicts. The distant supernovae do exactly that, explosion after explosion, by exactly the predicted factor. No energy loss mechanism does anything of the kind. Second, light that merely tires en route gets scattered and smeared along the way, and the universe's oldest light arrives as the most perfect, unsmeared thermal spectrum ever measured. To a precision, no tiring mechanism survives. Third, an elegant old test relating apparent size to apparent brightness across distance comes out, decade after decade, on expansion's side of the ledger. Tired light is not a minority view today. It is a closed case, kept alive only in corners of the internet where closed cases go to be believed. A second attack aimed at the redshifts themselves. The astronomer Halton Arp spent decades collecting photographs of high redshift quasars sitting suspiciously close on the sky to low redshift galaxies, arguing that redshift must be something objects carry intrinsically, a property, not a distance which would have unraveled the entire expanding universe in one pull. The resolution was statistics at scale. Modern surveys mapped millions of quasars, and found their redshifts marching in perfect lockstep with every independent measure of distance. The suspicious pairings dissolved into the ordinary coincidences any crowded sky produces. A third attack, after 1998, aimed at the acceleration. Perhaps the distant supernovae are dim, not because they are far, but because intergalactic dust veils them, or because ancient stellar explosions differed from modern ones. Those were respectable worries. The discovery teams themselves raised them first, and they were retired the hard way, by 20 years of cross-checking against witnesses that share none of the supernovae's weaknesses, the patterns frozen into the universe's oldest light, and the fossilized sound waves that ripple through the arrangement of the galaxies. 3 independent witnesses, 3 different physical mechanisms, 1 verdict. The acceleration stands. And what of the claim, which circulates whenever these results make news, that the disputes are being hidden, that cosmology knows something is wrong and closes ranks? The truth inverts it. The field's biggest current dispute may be the most publicized disagreement in modern science, and I have already shown it to you. The 2 readings of the expansion rate, 67 from the early universe, 73 from the local one, a gap of 5 sigma that a decade of auditing has failed to close. Far from being concealed, the Hubble tension is argued in public papers and press conferences, precisely because everyone knows what its resolution is worth. Note carefully, though, what the fight is about. The speedometer's 3rd digit, never the road, never the growth, never the acceleration, never tonight's geometry. Whichever camp wins, the trap's walls move by a few %. They do not come down. For completeness, one respectable minority report deserves its sentence, because it is science rather than folklore, and the difference matters. A small school of cosmologists argues that dark energy might be an illusion of accounting that because the real universe is lumpy, a froth of dense walls and enormous empty voids, averaging its expansion as if it were smooth, could manufacture a phantom acceleration where none exists. Clocks and rulers behave differently in the voids than in the walls, and the mismatch might mimic a push. The idea, called the timescape interpretation, resurfaced with fresh supernova analyses in 2024 and is being tested on its merits. Most of the field remains unconvinced. The smooth model keeps passing, checks the timescape has yet to face. But notice what even this boldest, respectable alternative offers you. A different bookkeeping for the acceleration, not a reprieve from the expansion, the redshifts, or the growing gulfs. Even in the rebel cosmology, the galaxies recede and the sky empties. The debate is over why the door closes, not whether. But one audit remains genuinely open, and because this channel does not sell false certainty, you will hear it in full. Since 2024, a new instrument in Arizona, 5,000 robotic eyes, mapping the positions of 40 million galaxies, has been assembling the most precise chart ever made of how the expansion has behaved across cosmic time. And its results keep hinting at something nobody ordered. Dark energy may not be constant. The data lean at real statistical strength, though short of the 5 sigma bar physics demands for discovery toward a push that was slightly stronger in the distant past and has been weakening in recent cosmic eras. Cosmologists are genuinely divided. Halves of the evidence pull in different directions, and the whole thing may yet dissolve into systematics, as such hints often do. But if it holds, if the push truly fades with time, then the one thing tonight I called eternal waivers. A weakening acceleration would mean the event horizon is not a permanent wall, but a tide line. The door would go on closing for ages, yet but the far future's arithmetic would reopen, and destinations now written off as gone could, over spans of tens of billions of years, drift back within the reach of light. I want to be precise about what this does and does not change. It changes nothing you have heard about tonight's universe. The horizon is where it is. The 97% is lost as surely as ever. The door closes at the same pace regardless, and no traveler or signal alive to these questions would notice any difference for billions of years. What it reopens is only the epilogue, whether the trap is the universe's final word or its longest chapter. As of tonight, honestly, nobody knows. The walls are measured. The permanence is pending. That is where a century of auditing leaves us. Every road out has been walked to its end, and every end is closed except one, which stands ajar by a crack, at the far side of forever, visible only in the third decimal place of the newest data. The universe I have described tonight is, by every available test, the universe there is. So the accounts are in order. The walls are real. The schedule is real. The concealment is underway, and the audits have held. Nothing remains between us and the question you brought to this video, the one sitting in its title, posed at the start of the night and kept waiting through every part since. Why is all of this the growing space, the compounding speed, the silent line, not just a boundary, not just geography, but a trap? It is time to answer it. Completely and in order. And then, because this is, after everything, a channel about rest, I will show you what the answer looks like from the other side. At the very beginning of tonight, I said a strange sentence almost in passing and asked you to hold on to it. The exits are moving. You have carried it through 13 billion years of story since then, and now, at the end, you finally have everything needed to hear what it actually says. So here is the answer. The whole night has been walking toward why the expansion of the universe is not just a marvel, not just a boundary, but deserves the word that the title gave it. A trap, assembled in 4 clauses, each one now yours. First, you cannot leave. Not because anything holds you, nothing holds you. The universe is open in every direction, no barrier anywhere, every road available. But the exits are moving, and they move faster than anything that will ever chase them. Past 16 billion light years, the roads themselves grow faster than light can run them. Every journey is permitted, and most journeys no longer possess ends. A prison whose walls you can never touch, never see, and never reach is still a prison. It is, in fact, the only perfect one ever devised. Escape is not forbidden. It is meaningless. Second, waiting makes it worse. An ordinary wall stands where it stands, and whoever cannot cross it today may cross it in a wiser century. This one is a tide. 20,000 suns slide over the line every second. 3 galaxies a year leave everyone's maximum future. Every era inherits less than the one before, and no engineering, ever, buys any of it back. Because the constraint was never speed, but the departure schedule, and the schedule concedes nothing. The trap does not merely hold its prisoners. It tightens, patiently, on all of them at once, and it has been tightening since before our star existed. Third, the bars are invisible and more than invisible. The whole apparatus is busy destroying the evidence of itself. Nothing in your sky marks the line. The lost 97% shines on, indistinguishable from the kept 3. The museum's lights stay lit for ages after the exhibits are gone. A museum of things that are already gone, remember, is exactly what the beauty overhead mostly is. And meanwhile, wing by wing, the expansion carries even the light away, so that the distant future on this island and every island will stand under a sealed sky that testifies, honestly and falsely, that nothing was ever out there at all. Most prisons, at least, inform their occupants. This one is erasing the fact of its own existence, so completely that the last knowing generation's records will read, to those who come after, as legend. A trap that operates on everyone, tightens on a schedule, and conceals itself from its captives. That is not geography. That is machinery. And fourth, the clause that begins to turn everything over, it locks in both directions. Whatever exists among the 2 trillion galaxies, however wise or hungry or lonely or kind, almost none of it can ever arrive here. No armada from the far superclusters, no catastrophe from beyond the line, no voice, no verdict, no rescue, and no invasion. The same geometry that cancels our reaching, cancels all reaching toward us. Every fear you have ever entertained about what the universe's darkness might contain, for 97% of that darkness, the answer is now settled, permanently. Whatever is there can never come. The walls of a trap, seen from inside, are also the walls of a shelter. It depends entirely on which side of the walls the dangerous things are, and the honest answer is, almost all of everything is on the other side. So the terror in tonight's title is real, and I will not take it back. But now, stand inside the 4 clauses and look around at what they enclose, because this is the other side of the answer, and it is the side you should carry into sleep. Gravity wins here. Expansion wins everywhere else. That sentence was a boundary line when I planted it. Feel what it has become now, a deed of ownership. Inside the fence where gravity writes the law, nothing in tonight's story has any power at all. The trap cannot touch 1 atom of your body, 1 stone of the earth, 1 star of the Milky Way, 1 galaxy of the local group's 80. Everything bound stays bound, forever, and count, one last time, what that everything is. 1 trillion suns, near enough. The merged future household of Andromeda and the Milky Way and all their satellite villages. A permanent estate so large that if you visited 1 star every single day, the itinerary would outlast the Earth's entire history, so far 2.5 billion years of tomorrows, each with its own new sun, before the list ran out. And the universe is not taking 1 day of it. Nothing that is ours is being carried away. Nothing that was ever, in any honest sense, within the reach of our kind, this galaxy, this group, this ocean of near worlds, appears anywhere on the departure board. What drains away, at 20,000 suns a second, is only the unclaimable. A fortune displayed forever, in a sky that was always, even before we knew it, a showroom rather than a shore. The trap took nothing from you. It defines what was yours, and what was yours turns out to be more than any species could exhaust in the lifetime of its stars. And if 1 trillion suns somehow sounds provincial after a night spent among trillions of galaxies, do the last arithmetic gently. 3% of 2 trillion galaxies remain, tonight, on our side of the line. 3% sounds like scraps until you write it out. 60 billion galaxies. 60 billion islands of stars still, in principle, connected to this bed, still reachable by a sufficiently patient signal, still part of every future the universe can write for us. That is what remains after the greatest confiscation in existence. An allotment 60 billion galaxies deep. The universe's generosity is so far beyond the scale of any possible need that even 97% losses leave more than all the minds that will ever exist here could use. The trap is real, and the leftovers are 60 billion galaxies. Terror, at this scale, has to share the bed with abundance. 1 breath for the epilogue, too, because honesty planted it, and it deserves to flower here at the end. The newest measurements, the 40 million galaxies, the hints that the push may be weakening mean the very last page of this story is not yet written. If dark energy truly fades across the far future, then on timescales beside which everything tonight is a prologue, the tide could slacken and the horizon drift outward again, and some of what was written off could someday, in some remote era, come back within the reach of light. Probably not. The constant push remains the best reading of the sky. But the universe has reversed its own story before it did it in 1998, to a room full of people checking their arithmetic in disbelief. And it is strangely restful, I find, that the door of all doors may not be entirely done deciding what it is. The walls are measured. The forever is pending. Even the trap, in the end, is humble before the data. And you specifically, listening in the dark on this particular night of the universe's story, hold the one privilege the trap grants nowhere else in time. You live inside the window, early enough that the sky still testifies, late enough that the testimony can be read. You have spent tonight doing the exact thing that nearly every mind that will ever exist, the sealed sky minds of the endless later eras, brilliant and honest and wrong, will be structurally forbidden from doing, knowing where you are. The lit museum, the visible walls, the legible story count the minds across all the dark trillions of years to come, and almost none of them get a single evening of what you have had tonight. The universe is forgetting itself. You are one of the few, in the fullest accounting, who was awake while it still remembered. So here is the terrifying truth about how fast space is expanding. Say it now, in one breath, all of it. Space grows by 70 kilometers a second across every stretch of its emptiness, compounding without limit, faster than light, beyond a line it will never let you cross. And it is a trap, because the exits are moving, because the door tightens on a schedule, because the bars hide themselves, and because it locks from both sides at once. Every word of that is true, and none of it is coming for you. That is the strange mercy at the bottom of the night. Of all the true and terrifying sentences in cosmology, this one describes the only disaster in the universe that is 100% guaranteed never to arrive. It is happening everywhere, always, at the greatest possible scale, and the sum total of its effect on the room you are lying in, on the life you will live tomorrow, and on every life this island will ever hold, is nothing at all. The catastrophe is real, and you are not in it. You are in the part it cannot reach. Let the night sky be what it has actually been all along, then. A museum, yes, but you were never locked in a museum. You were granted one, wing upon wing of it, the lights left on, the old masters still glowing, admission free for as long as the window holds. And beyond the last hall, walls that ask nothing of you, guard everything around you, and close so slowly that their closing is measured in the lifetimes of stars. Sphere far above your roof, right now, the between is quietly growing 70 kilometers a second, out where nothing holds and nothing minds. And here, where everything holds, nothing has moved at all. The glass on the nightstand is where you left it. The floor is the same distance from the ceiling it was this morning. Your breath goes out and comes back across a distance the universe has agreed, permanently, never to change. The largest event in existence is happening tonight in every direction, and every direction is far from here. The exits are moving. Let them move. You were never going that way. Everything you were ever going toward, every place, every face, every morning, is here, inside the fence, where gravity holds what it loves. Rest well.